Joining me now is Stephen Haggard. He's the director of the Korea Pacific program at the University of California at San Diego. He's also the author of co-author, I should say, of a couple of books about the DPRK. And Stephen also has a blog out there about North Korea, and I just want to lift a little bit of it that you wrote recently. Any effort to understand the country is going to be pieced together with scraps of evidence that are highly imperfect. And Stephen, I think that's a good way of really framing this. So as you look at the imperfect evidence, what are we to read into all of this?
Well, I think we have to go back to when this cycle of escalatory rhetoric, and it's important to emphasize rhetoric as opposed to actions, began. This really started around the time that the UN Security Council was negotiating a resolution of new sanctions following the satellite launch and nuclear tests of December and February. And I think at that juncture, the North Koreans made a very important tactical, maybe even strategic error in using the term preemption in their discussion of what they might do following that resolution. And I think that's really gone a long way to put this situation on edge.
Stephen, I think all too often we look at everything from a Western prism, and I'd like, you recently wrote a piece saying that Kim Jong-un is not crazy, and I think you bring up some interesting points about how he's trying to sell this to the people in North Korea. Can you go over some of those points that you made?
Well, sure. The first thing we have to understand, remember, is that this guy is 26, 27 years old, and he's running a country which is obviously Byzantine in its complexity. And so he didn't come to office until December 2011 when his father died, and he's had to face a very entrenched set of stakeholders within the system, including the military. So we have to remember there's a lot of domestic politics going on here. This is a guy who's seeking to consolidate his position. That's involved some purges of some very senior officials. Just this week, we had a major new appointment to the position of premier, the possible demotion of several high-ranking military and security officers in the party hierarchy. So I think that we look at this through our lens, through the issues that are of relevance to us. But we have to remember there's also a domestic political game going on here on the North Korean side.
So who's calling the shots in North Korea then?
Well, I usually don't think of this as an issue of any single individual. I think we have to think of this in terms of coalitions of actors that are trying to influence the ebb and flow of policy. And clearly the leader, the senior guy, who is very young, in fact, is kind of navigating between different political forces in the country. The military, on the one hand, obviously wants to see a continued large military budget, has been schooled in in the defense of the country and the importance of retaliating aggressively if anything were to go wrong, and pressing humanitarian and economic needs. And we have to remember that North Korea is a desperately poor country. I think this is often forgotten. And we've already seen some signs, even this week, that the leadership is thinking again about the possibility of trying to get some reform going that might move the country forward.
Stephen Haggard, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Certainly appreciate your insights.